Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 272 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes on this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 84 from February 25th, 2004. My name is Aria, and joining me, as always, is the Jack Evans to my Johnny Devine. It's Cindy. Cindy, how the hell you doing today?
I'm all right, and that comparison works for multiple reasons.
Yes, for instance, we stood around and watched wrestling. To be fair, I actually sat around and watched wrestling, but you know, Jack Evans and Johnny Devine will not be wrestling on this show.
But instead, we'll have some decent wrestling. The reason why it's so apt is because Jack Evans is from my neck of the woods, Tacoma, Washington.
Well, Johnny Devine is nowhere near me, so why is this a great comparison?
I just said the comparison to me and Jack Evans.
Oh. Wow. Okay. So anywho, we are officially 84 episodes into this thing. How the hell did we make it 84 episodes?
I don't know, sheer brute force and ignorance.
I feel like it's impossible that we actually watched 84 episodes of TNA. It just, you know, it was damn, man. It was, and we still have about 26 to go, you know? 26. Yeah, 110 minus 84 is in fact 26. Yeah. We have about 26 episodes to go. Yeah. And it's the end of February, the last time we'll have to talk about February during the weekly pay-per-view era.
Well, this is kind of taking weeks off my life, so
84 of them to be precise.
I'm not counting. It's a little bit less than that because of when we did double shots.
Well, we still watched them. That's the important thing. Allegedly. I mean, I watched them. I assume you watched them.
I watched them. Don't worry about that.
Hey, you know, I was not in your house forcing you to watch any of these shows, you know? And the hilarious thing always is, you know, every so often, for whatever reason, we'll do 2 shows in 1 week, and I'll get it in my head that, okay, I'm going to get ahead of the game here and watch an episode of TNA during our off week, so this way I don't have to watch it, you know, in case something happens. Like, I don't know, there's like a giant blizzard in the Northeast, and it could cause the power to go out, you know? I at least I'm one ahead, you know, so I don't have to worry about that. Never works out that way. Never works out that way. I always end up sitting here going, I don't want to fucking watch this on my week off.
And sorry about your damn luck.
Listen, Chris Harris. Well, speaking of Chris Harris, Jesus Christ. But speaking of Jesus Christ, this crowd did not give a fuck about Jesus Christ. Or at least Jesus Christ. Well, I guess specifically, they didn't give a fuck about Jesus Christ's addition to Vince Russo's life. And this was one shitball of a promo. We'll get to that here in a minute, but you know, last week when this show ended last week, I was like, okay, next week is at least going to be a reset show, so it'll be a good show. This was not a good show.
And it wasn't much of a reset.
No. And I guess it's a good thing it wasn't a full-on reset, but at least the one good thing about a reset show is you get the one good show before it all goes to hell again.
This clearly tells me Russo does not have a substantial amount of control of the book. Granted, with Russo, he can start something off interesting, but it never really gets going after 3 weeks.
If you're that lucky.
Yeah.
Tell you what, if the company gets broken down into another giant group versus giant group war, then we know dipshit is back with the book.
Mm-hmm.
But
and as far as I know, with what's happening with the rest of the shows, that doesn't happen.
Well, before we get into this, we have a little bit of fun news. Well, there really is no best time to bring this up because, that but we'll talk about most of the Teddy Hart CM Punk news later on. But that is not the only Teddy Hart news of the week. The other news of the week is his involvement on the show itself. Now, the America's X Cup is coming up in 2 weeks. It's Mexico versus Canada. And as they mentioned last week, and Teddy Hart is in because they're doing the same thing they did the first time, where they tape some of the matches the 1 week and then come back the second week to tape the rest of the matches,
mm-hmm.
And then do a pre-tape and do the whole pay-per-view as a pre-tape on the 10th. Now, Teddy Hart came in, and his first singles match this week, or on the show, spoiler alert, is against Mr. Aguila. And after the match, he claimed his knee was so hurt that he could not wrestle in the three-way match that kicks off the show that we'll talk about on the live pay-per-view. Now, Mr. Aguila claimed that Teddy told him that he was going to work a knee injury to get out of the match. And then later on at the hotel after the show, Teddy was seen without crutches. So, Teddy Hart, our big newsmaker of the week this week.
For all the wrong reasons.
At the request of my co-host, we're going to save the rest of the Teddy Hart news until much, much later. Now, the show begins with a video of each time Russo was involved in a world title change, and then they showed Jarrett beating him up back in October, which was how they got rid of him when Hogan was coming in, and of course, Hogan never came in. Now, they did make a few changes on this show. Most notably, they got rid of the Randy Savage rap song.
I think it's for the better because that song was kind of shit.
You don't want to hear them talk about the X division or the tag teams or the heavyweight division.
I prefer a good piece of music. And
well, if we ever get one, I'll make sure to point that out to you.
Yeah, the Impact theme from 2005 when they go on Spike.
Adrenaline Rush.
The actual intro, not Adrenaline Rush.
Okay. I have no idea what you're talking about, but we'll just go with it. So we go to the opening match because, hey, what the best way to how do you kick off the best TNA shows with an actual in-ring match, and usually a good one at that. And we actually got a pretty good one here that the fans didn't give a shit about because, the fans don't give a shit about much on these shows. But it was Juventud Guerrera versus Jerry Lynn versus Petey Williams, making his, well, I guess technically not his TNA debut because he's already taped a match for the X Cup, but his live pay-per-view TNA debut. And Petey is, of course, filling in for Teddy Hart because, as we mentioned, Teddy was supposed to be in this match, but they covered up by saying he's got a knee injury that will keep him out of action until the March 10th pay-per-view. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And of course, Petey will end up wrestling for this company off and on pretty much for the next 15 years. I guess not really quite, because he leaves in 2009. I don't even know if he really does anything, but he doesn't do anything until Scott D'Amore brings him back, when D'Amore and Don Callis were running the company there for a bit.
I
And he
think
was there
Petey
for a
was
few more
mainly
years.
doing. I think he was mainly a trainer at BCW's wrestling school, or Scott D'Amore's wrestling school, or something like that.
Now, Jerry Lynn was obviously rehired after being fired last week. And I got to ask you, everyone was like, oh man, Jeff Jarrett fired this guy and that guy over there. This is so unfair. Did anyone stop and consider that maybe he was doing this because it was for budgetary concerns and not because he was on an ego trip? Maybe Jerry Lynn was charging too much money to be on the show. You're not even
No,
going to, you know.
I'm not dignifying that because we know how stupid it is.
Maybe Tiny the Timekeeper was charging $1,000 a show to ring the bell. That's an
You're
absurd amount of
fucking.
money for someone to ring the bell.
You're fucking nuts.
So during this match, they showed all three teams, Jack Evans, Teddy Hart, and Johnny Devine of Team Canada, with Scott D'Amore, Hector Garza, Abismo Negro, and Mr. Aguila of Team Mexico. And later on, we also had Elix Skipper, Chris Sabin, and Sanjay Dutt of Team TNA standing in the crowd. During this match, Tenay also mentioned that Don Callis is no longer in charge and that he's been banned from the asylum. And now Don Callis goes back to his original role of being a consultant, which they never really explained, because they always just said he was the TNA management consultant, and he was allowed, and with that role apparently gave him the ability to go on and, book half the show and fight with Eric Watts. But yeah, Don Callis will no longer be seen on this show. They're not even keeping his name alive at this point. Now, the people actually in this match did a few neat three-way spots, including a triple crossarm breaker. And then at one point, Petey goes for a scorpion death drop on Hoovy, and Lynn gave Petey one at the same time. Then Petey gave Lynn a sunset flip. At the same time, Lynn gave Hoovy a German suplex. And the finish saw Lynn give Hoovy a TKO, but Petey stole the pin with a top rope splash on Hoovy. And I gotta say, it's like knowing the backstage drama that Teddy Hart, backed out of this match like 30 minutes before it began. I gotta say, Petey really filled in pretty well here, considering he wasn't supposed to be in the match in the first place. Now, obviously, like I said, Teddy Hart was supposed to win all along. I don't remember if I said it or not, but Teddy Hart was supposed to win this match. And the whole point of it was to give the Canadian team some credibility, since they hadn't been on the show before. And honestly, and I'm not saying Teddy Hart would have made for a worse match itself, but I think that story makes it better for Petey to be in there, because no one has any fucking idea who Petey Williams is. And so Petey getting a win over Juventud Guerrera, the guy that won the match for Team Mexico last month, that gives him a ping of credibility.
Yeah, because now he's got to win against two stars of the X Division. Yep. We have to say that Jerry Lynn's a star. Hoovy's always been a star, even though he comes in sporadically.
Now, of course, Hoovy is not a fan of doing jobs. And I know at some point coming up, that's going to be a focus of some America's X Cup drama. But I don't know if that's next week or next month, but we'll get to that when it comes up. But either way, he did the job here, and Petey wins. I gave the match a 6.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 as well. Spoiler alert, it's the best match on the show.
I disagree with that, but
I just think the action was there, and I've always been a Petey Williams fan since I first saw him when I watched the Fox Sportsnet era.
Now, I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks whether or not he did it during the singles match. But at one point into this match, he was also doing the fishing reel to try to lure, I forget it was Lynn or Hoovy, into the Canadian Destroyer. And the crowd did not react to that at all, which made me think that maybe he doesn't do it in at least the first match. Because at that point, if he didn't do it in that match in front of these same fans, then it's like, what the hell is he doing? Like, I know what he's doing. You know what he's doing. The people listening to this know what he's doing. But the people, the audience didn't know what he was doing. Tenay and West either didn't notice it or, just flew over their heads. They didn't notice or care. But Petey Williams has some time to get over. We'll just say that.
He's got time. He got a win. So plus he also is in with D'Amore, so he's going to be around for a while.
We didn't get a video that was taped last week where Bill Apter, on behalf of Total Wrestling Magazine, presented America's Most Wanted with awards for Tag Team of the Year, and then gave one to TNA itself as the most innovative promotion of the year. Now, I'm not calling complete bullshit here, but if this was a shoot vote, Ring of Honor is a far more innovative promotion than TNA could ever dream of being.
I think it also falls in line with barrier of entry.
It has more to do with the fact that they're not going to get any publicity giving Ring of Honor an award. At least, giving TNA the award, even though it's on pay-per-view and it's like 5,000 people buying it, you're still going to at least have some people seeing it.
Right. Whereas Ring of Honor at this time, YouTube doesn't exist. All there is just message boards and their own website. And
VHS DVD releases, baby.
At VHS DVD releases. And it's kind of, especially at $15, $20 a shot? 15 for a VHS, 20 for a DVD?
I do not know.
But still, the barrier of entry is kind of prohibitive, where I would rather pay 10. It's either you pay 10 for a pay-per-view or you pay 20 for live pay-per-view or pre-tape pay-per-view in case of the America's X Cup, or you pay 15 to 20 for a show that happened 4 months ago.
It was a little bit faster of a turnaround than that, but it's like, it also comes up to what you're looking for, and you're watching an alternative to WWE, and it's easier to watch TNA. We'll just say that, because Ring of Honor, even when they were putting them out fairly quickly, you still have to order it. You still have to pay for shipping. You still have to wait for it to be shipped and then arrive. Whereas TNA, you press the button to buy the pay-per-view. And obviously, by looking at, the history of both companies, neither got a whole lot of people to do either. But we'll just keep going here. From here, Mike Tenay is in the ring and says he will continue to remain skeptical of Vince Russo, but Russo has convinced him that he's going to do his best to keep Jeff Jarrett's out-of-control ego in check, and then introduced Russo to the ring. So we will start with the positives of this segment, and that being that since October, Vince Russo has discovered the joys of shaving your face.
Again.
And that's pretty much where the positives of this end.
No, also the hair. I hated the hair that he had when he came back in May. We've seen Russo clean shaven before.
So Russo said he deserved his ass kicking because 10 years ago he knelt at the altar of television ratings. He booked The Undertaker to come down on a crucifix. No one bothered to point out to him that TNA doesn't have television ratings. And then the best part was, while he was whining about all this, you could hear one fan scream, "Who cares?"
I was wondering if you're going to catch that because I caught it too, and it gave me a nice little chuckle. I will be honest, the promo was bad is not the right term for it. It was just weird.
He was crying at one point, and it's like, he's just being heckled to hell here. That same fan that yelled, "Who cares?" screamed, "No, you haven't," when Russo was like, "I've been forgiven." And I'm like, I want to invite that fan onto the podcast. He began asking for forgiveness, and so the fans, a small smattering of fans, chanted bullshit at this. And here's a question. If he has been forgiven, why does he need forgiveness?
Because he's been forgiven by a higher power and not necessarily the fans or the wrestlers. And he's wanting their forgiveness.
This brought out Jeff Jarrett, who said Russo is a liar and a snake, just like every other promoter or owner in wrestling. Jarrett said his hard feelings for Russo went out the window when he beat him back black and blue. Jarrett said if Russo wants to be on his side, all he has to do is ask. Russo said the curtain on the Jeff Jarrett show is about to drop and that it is time for Jarrett to pass the torch to those who have earned it. You see, Cindy, wrestling is fake. And Jeff Jarrett can't be taken out of the top spot because someone's better than him. He's taken out of the top spot because he lets other people beat him in fake wrestling matches. Jarrett screamed that it is his time and that it will continue to be his time until he decides to step away. After threatening Tenay, he shoved Russo down. Now, we're trying to get this whole, new top babyface thing over. We're trying to get, new wrestlers to come out and take the top spot from Jeff Jarrett. So when Jeff Jarrett shoves Vince Russo down, Cindy, did Chris Harris run out for the save and attack Jeff Jarrett?
Nope.
Cindy, did AJ Styles run out and attack Jeff Jarrett?
Nope.
What happened instead was Vince Russo stood up, and so Jeff Jarrett slapped him, and he fell down again. And then Vince Russo got up and walked away, because the point of this is not to get over a new, hot, young wrestler as a top guy. It's to get over Vince Russo. And this was the show that he turned the other cheek. He got slapped. And instead of fighting back, he just walked away. Not only that, he then gave Jeff Jarrett the night off because he is turning the other cheek and doesn't want to, be mean towards Jeff Jarrett anymore.
You remember there was this one Rocco's Modern Life episode where Rocco's bully was coming to visit, and it was like a major Russo. It was like what Russo happened. Gave a heartfelt apology, $5, and asked him to punch him in the nose. And Russo did.
Russo punched somebody on Rocco's Modern Life?
Well, Rocco's former bully.
I know, but you just told me that Russo.
He was the bully who was forgiven, a la Russo. This was so weird that
I was like, this was bad. This was fucking bad. This was not a good segment at all. It was just like, again, what was the point of it? Because I think we talked about this. Russo doesn't wrestle again, which, hallelujah. So in that case, what's the point of it? The point of it again is to put over Vince Russo, not any of the wrestlers on the show. And we'll get to it. We're going to get 6 hours of Chris Harris later on. But, why didn't Chris Harris run down? They never even make mention until later in the show, last week's main event, where Chris Harris got screwed twice. I got to say, this Chris Harris main event push, I can't wait till we get to his match. Scott Hudson was now with the Juggalos, and by the Juggalos, I don't mean the Insane Clown Posse. I mean Too Tough Tony and Rudy Hill. Now, Too Tough Tony has been on the show for like a month now, and when they go backstage, you see two guys with facial hair and a bunch of tattoos, and I'm like, who the fuck are these people? And of course, one of them is somebody we've seen on the fucking show now half a dozen times. And the other is Rudy Hill, who we find out later, I believe, is the same guy as the Rude Boy.
Yeah, he is the Rude Boy. I called him ICP, the ICP B team.
We are informed that the important members of ICP are off doing more important things on today. I want to point out Rudy Hill did a better job of putting over AJ Styles and Chris Sabin as hot young wrestlers and the future of wrestling than anybody in that last segment ever did. And then Rudy said that he hopes Too Tough Tony doesn't run into David Young. And I know what he was actually trying to say, but the fact that every time Too Tough Tony and David Young have been near each other, David Young has kicked his ass. He really shouldn't come anywhere near David Young.
I mean, this is before Too Tough Tony learned how to pour vodka or tequila on his hand and throw a flaming punch. I am never going to get that image out of my head.
So speaking of JCW, did you see, and speaking of Russo, you see how this shit comes full circle? Did you see the news that broke today about Russo's amazing idea for a JCW angle?
No, I didn't see this.
I should go back, and it did not stick with me who he booked to have this have, but he booked an angle to have some wrestler in the ring get attacked by somebody wearing ice gear, but it would turn out to be Glacier. You see, it's funny because Glacier is just a block of moving ice.
Well, nowadays he moves like a block of moving ice. By the way, it wouldn't happen because Glacier is kind of tentatively working with AEW.
It was Mecha Wolf, by the way.
They're going to have Mecha Wolf in the ice gear. He's got a decent gimmick already.
No. Glacier was going to attack Mecha Wolf in the ice gear.
Oh.
And I want it, when ice got revealed, I want it to be Glacier, bro. Would that not have stuck it up everybody's ass? They'd be ripping me to shreds, and he's ice because he's Glacier, you freaking idiots. But the problem is, bro, it would never be able to go that far without people being up in arms. You would have to do this for a couple weeks and then do the reveal. After the first week, bro, people will be up in arms.
Well, I think Russo forgets to realize that ice might be the most toxic thing right now.
Bro, but you don't understand, bro. The couple hundred people watching the JCW show were got big heat, bro. And by the way, this was on the 2-Man Power Trip podcast.
Oh, this is a 2-man. Yeah, they've interviewed a lot of people, so I understand it.
Johnny Swinger versus Simon Diamond in a special challenge match. Both Simon and Swinger
dud.
Mm-hmm. Simon and Swinger came out to the same exact song. I guess they can have a match for their theme song at some point. By the way, during this match, they announced that there are no more cage dancers. Vince Russo said no more cage dancers. And let's be fucking honest, and I mentioned this last week when you brought it up, if they never would have brought it up, nobody would have fucking noticed except for you. You know, it's like the cage dancers haven't been a feature part of the show in what feels like months. You know, they used to do the crawl at the bottom of the screen for all the NWA shows, you know, and they'd have the cage dancers dancing, and they stopped doing that a while ago. And then they tried to do that angle with Tracy and them, and they stopped that, you know, when Tracy had her immigration issues. But yeah. But yeah, no, if they wouldn't have mentioned it, no one would have noticed or given a shit. Now, this match began with a foot race. Now, I know, Cindy, that I've been accused of being a smartass before, but this match legitimately began with Simon chasing Swinger around the asylum and back into the ring. And here's the problem. Nobody gave a shit. And it's like the match wasn't that great to begin with, but no one gave a shit because we were never given a reason. Why did Swinger turn on Simon? They built that up for a month, that one of them signed the Jeff Jarrett loyalty pledge and one didn't. And they never bothered to do the promo where Johnny Swinger said, "This is why I did that." And be a matter of fact, it's like, maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe I'm being worked. But it seems pretty fucking obvious to me that Johnny Swinger did not want to fucking do this angle and is not really into this whole match at all.
You are 100% correct. Because it's not long after this where this feud continues for a while. And after that, he's paired up with Gilberti, and it's just, he is just going through motions. He is waiting, he can't wait to job every week on Sunday Night Heat.
The funny thing is, he didn't job every week on Sunday Night Heat. Johnny Parisi got a bunch of wins.
Did he?
So, he probably has as many wins as Frankie Kazarian did. Before Kaz decided that he was what's his name, who didn't want to cut his hair in the Bible. Anyway, the finish of this match saw Johnny Swinger pull out the biggest brass knuckles in pro wrestling history and knock out Simon Diamond for the pin. Now, this is where an already, man match goes into complete bullshit territory. So first of all, Swinger takes off the knucks and puts them in Simon's knee pad. Why? And we kind of get the answer to that because Rudy Charles runs down and says,
"You can't do that."
And he announces that the match is going to be restarted due to the cheating. Not a disqualification, just a restart. So I'm sitting here like, okay, so what's going to happen here is Simon Diamond is going to pull the brass knucks out of his knee pad and knock out Swinger with them, which is going to be dumb enough when they don't restart it. But at least, hey, it explains why Swinger put the fucking brass knucks in Simon's knee pad. Well, he didn't even do that because instead, Swinger pulls the brass knuckles out of Simon Diamond's knee pad, tries to use them. Posey stops him, and then Glenn Gilberti, David Young, and Kid Cash run down for the disqualification. Then, Too Tough Tony tried to make the save, but got his ass kicked. Then, Rudy ran in for save number 2 and got his ass kicked too. Maybe if they would have run in together, it could have worked. Oh well. Cash gave one of them an unprotected chair shot to the head, and finally Black Shirt Security made save number 3, and this one worked. This was a forgettable match with 2 bad finishes, making it even worse. Rating 1.0 out of 10.
I was so blah about this match. I didn't even put a rating on it, so I'll go with you and say 1 out of 10. This,
What?
I wish they did. That's what Explosion is for. You could have come up with some bullshit excuse, like Swinger would have said, like Jarrett promised me more money, or something like that.
Hey, dude, on Explosion, Scott Hudson is on the show 15 times a week. Why didn't Scott Hudson talk to Johnny Swinger for 30 seconds before this match started?
Because he had to talk to the ICP B team.
Oh, you're telling me, you can't tell me we couldn't have just had another Scott Hudson promo. You know, after that promo, they did the video package for this match. They could have had a Johnny Swinger 30-second interview before his entrance. We've seen the back of the Asylum. We know it would take him 12 seconds to walk from the interview stage to the curtain. But yeah, like this is I don't know if worried is the right word. But it's like this is going to be one of those feuds where you take, a good team, a good working team, and now the parts do not equal the sum of the two. And it's like there really is no point because like the tag team champions right now going into the show are AJ Styles and Abyss. And even if they weren't feuding with each other, who the hell would they be wrestling? Because we just broke up, Diamond and Swinger. We broke up the red shirts. Chris Harris is wrestling as a single. 3 Live Crew is wrestling the franchise. There's nobody for them to wrestle anyway. Speaking of the franchise, Scott Hudson was now with the new franchise, and Shane Douglas is actually in his gear this week. Jeff Jarrett walked up perplexed that this wasn't his promo time. Douglas said you can't trust Vince Russo and reiterated that the new franchise would back him up, while I remind Cindy that maybe it'd be a good idea to mute herself occasionally.
Oh, I'm sorry. I muted myself on Discord and not the podcast.
And so as Shane, and Tracy walked off, Jarrett turned around and there were the fucking Naturals standing off camera. And apparently it is the fucking Naturals' job this week to take care of Chris Harris. And then he told Kevin Northcutt, who was even further off camera, to go get him his phone. This ended up being the only appearance this week for Kevin Northcutt, so he may still be looking for Jeff Jarrett's phone. Why couldn't Jarrett get his own fucking phone?
Isn't that what pockets are for?
Isn't that what what's for?
Pockets? I mean,
well, who knows if Jeff Jarrett's tight white pants have pockets?
Be weird if they didn't.
So yeah,
on that note,
the fucking Naturals proved me wrong by actually being on the show 2 weeks in a row. So from here we go to the new franchise with Tracy Brooks versus Conan and Ron Killings with BG James. As indifferent as I have been towards the 3 Live Crew as a whole, they are one of the few acts on this show that regularly get the crowd to actually react. And BG was on commentary again this week, just as good as he was last week when he was on commentary.
Which means he was completely piss poor.
Michael took a tremendous bump flying out of the ring for Conan, but then he and Truth mistimed a spot where he pulled on the top rope, but Truth didn't quite make it over on the first attempt. It was at this point I was wondering what the main event of this show was, because they never fucking mentioned it. Douglas and Truth ended up outside the ring where Douglas slapped BG and BG attacked him for not the disqualification. Instead, the referee just told BG to go back to commentary. While that happened, Conan put Michael in the Tequila Sunrise in the ring for the tap out, but no referee. Tracy ran into the ring and hit Conan with her cast to break it up, and Conan was pinned with a super kick. Where is the second referee to run in and restart this match?
Probably helping Kevin Northcutt find Jeff Jarrett's phone.
After the match, Truth and Conan argued before walking off. Because what we need is the 3 Live crew to tease splitting up.
I mean, what other teams are going to... If you get rid of 3 Live crew, that means there are no face tag teams right now.
That means the only teams left are the new franchise and the fucking Naturals.
And to be honest, I don't want to see either one of those teams.
Oh, come on. You don't want a lengthy feud of Shane Douglas and Michael Shane versus the Naturals?
No.
Don't you remember that one summer on Monday Night Raw where the only 2 tag teams they had were the Hurricane and Rosie and the Heartthrobs?
Well, this was what, 2005?
That's how you get an epic tag team feud, you know? They just wrestle each other every week on Heat. And then they brought in Cade and Murdoch. I can't believe you would put down the tag team division featuring Hurricane and Rosie and the Heartthrobs.
Because around the same time on SmackDown, they had the Dicks.
Oh, I mean, the Dicks made for a third tag team other than M&M and the tag team champions, Road Warrior Animal and John Heidenreich.
Right, yeah. By the way, that is Walmart Employee of the Month, John Heidenreich. Thank you very much.
He's not Employee of the Month. But speaking of that, since I mentioned it on the site formerly known as angrymarks.com a few weeks ago, shout out to John Heidenreich, who realized that he's not a fucking big enough star to get away with not working. He went and got a job. And good for him. And I'll be honest, good for, when, I remember a bunch of years ago when Just Incredible was working for Target, all the people who were ripping on him on social media because he went and got a real job, because the motherfucker needed to make money and to have, a life. And then the same people ripped on Shane Douglas. I think he was a manager of Target at one point. I saw nothing but positive feedback for John Heidenreich working at Walmart.
Yeah, because I think it's different circumstances. I think people are a little more attuned now to having a job, and knowing that it's really important. And also, I think it's because Heidenreich, enough time has passed that we were forgetting all about Heidenreich. Except for that one segment.
I was at that one segment. Actually, depends which one segment are you talking about, because there's 2 one segments. One where he raped Michael Cole, and the other when he came out in Hershey, Pennsylvania, with his face covered in chocolate and a giant Hershey bar.
The one where he didn't kind of look like he was going into a sugar coma.
By the way, there's 4 one segments, because we also have those 2 segments with him and Gene Snitsky. See, we have 4 great segments with Heidenreich. Great, of course, being a liberal use of the word great. I use the word great like wrestling fans use the "this is awesome" chant.
That is true. I mean, you would see basic mat wrestling happen, and they'll go, "This is awesome," or somebody does a corkscrew plancha over the top rope.
I mean, sometimes nice technical wrestling is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if Mr. Regal is doing it, that is awesome.
Because he's damn good at it. Or Bryan Danielson, for that matter. Or Claudio.
By the way, I forgot to I don't know if we mentioned this or not. I gave that tag match a 3.0 out of 10.
That's exactly what I gave it to.
Scott Hudson was now with America's Most Wanted. James Storm is in a sling, and he's going to be out for 6 more weeks after the most recent attack by the Naturals. And before we get into this, I went back and looked because I was like, when the fuck didn't the Naturals attack him in January? And yes, January 21st was when the Naturals attacked James Storm and apparently injured his shoulder. And the problem with that, not just that, AMW wrestled on Explosion a few weeks ago, not just that AMW wrestled a couple indie matches in the meantime. We've seen James Storm on this show multiple times without his fucking arm in a sling. He retroactively got an injured shoulder 5 weeks ago.
No. What happened was the show is so broken, everything, that him and Johnny Fairplay had to use the same sling. Yeah.
He should have fucking borrowed Fairplay's neck bracelet was at it too. By the way, Chris Harris will be wrestling Chase Stevens tonight, and Harris was mad at Russo for not having a match with Jarrett tonight. With that said, he is looking forward to getting revenge. And any thoughts on this amazing promo we have here?
It's like the same thing with many Chris Harris promos. They're fine. He shows some decent babyface fire, but some of it I just don't believe. Like, James Storm had the charisma down. Chris Harris honestly never had that much charisma.
Chris Harris versus Chase Stevens. Now, it was noted that this is the first time we've ever seen Chase in a singles match. Not mentioned that this is only the second time we've seen Chase wrestle as part of the Naturals, with the other time being last October. Now, here's the thing about this, and this is going to be quite the segment here, but I get you want to give Chase Stevens an opportunity to show his stuff and not just be squashed. But Harris is just starting to get a push as a top babyface, and Chase will never be considered for anything close to that spot. If you wanted to have Harris in a somewhat competitive singles match to show off that he could win a singles match and also get over the fact that this isn't his forte, he should have wrestled someone like Kid Cash or Glenn Gilberti or David Young, someone who is a low-level heel, but you can say, well, this person has singles match experience, while Harris has only been wrestling in tags. Anyway, despite that, Harris did win with the Catatonic, and I'm sure that Sydney's about to tell me that she did not rate this separately, but I did. I gave it a 3.0 out of 10.
Well, don't you feel stupid, because I did rate it separately, and I gave it a 4 out of 10. I thought it was fine.
Here I was ready for you to tell me that you rated this whole thing as one segment.
Nope, not in the slightest.
So you thought it was fine?
It was fine. I mean, it proved that Chase Stevens is, if he was to be a singles person, he would just be an X Division wrestler. And Chris Harris is not.
When Andy Douglas gets injured in a few years, Chase does have, I don't even call it a push. I don't even call it a run. Chase wrestles in X Division matches in a few years while Andy Douglas is injured.
So my point stands.
After the match, Russo sent Andrew Thomas to the ring to demand that Chris Harris now wrestle Andy Douglas. So that gave our stars. Next match, Chris Harris versus Andy Douglas with Chase Stevens in his corner. Lather, rinse, repeat everything I just said a minute ago. This time, Harris won when Stevens tried to interfere, and Douglas collided with him on the apron, and Harris got a schoolboy for the win. 2.0 out of 10.
3.0 out of 10. So we're in agreement. It was worse than the last match.
1 whole point worse than the last match.
Exactly.
Russo then came out and demanded Harris versus the Naturals in a handicap match.
Are you heel, Russo?
Storm then came out to confront Russo, and Russo told him something. So Storm just walked to the ring to be in his partner's corner, giving us Chris Harris with James Storm versus the Naturals in a 2-on-1 handicap match. So, honestly, this just points out what I said earlier would have been better. It should have been David Young and Kid Cash, or David Young and Glenn Gilberti, because you could have done the same damn thing. You had the ounce of credibility that you have these people who actually have singles match experience, who are also a semi-regular tag team. By the way, there's another tag team that can feud with the Naturals, David Young and Glenn Gilberti. Like,
How are they gifted?
Literally, the Naturals have zero credibility. They've literally only wrestled one time before this week, and we have never been given any reason to care or even know who the hell they are. They just keep showing up randomly, and we're told, hey, that's the Naturals. And that's it. Like, this is why Brian Alvarez, for decades, still don't know which one is Chase Stevens, which one is Andy Douglas. Like, and not saying that, like, hey, these guys are full of charisma and should be given a whole bunch of promo time, but we're never given a fucking reason to know or care who these people are.
And when they do get some promo time, we find out that there is less than no reason that they should be given any promo time.
So the Naturals got the heat on Harris, and Harris eventually made the hot tag to himself. And even though America's Most Wanted has always been a big fan of the double hot tag, there was only one hot tag in this match. Both Naturals tried to grab chairs, but Rudy Charles prevented Andy Douglas from using it. Chase got in the ring with his, but Storm slid in and super kicked it into his face, and Harris got the pin. Where was Mike Posier, Andrew Thomas to run in and announce,
"You can't do that,"
and get the match restarted? Apparently nowhere, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Harris needed outside interference to pin the Naturals. Remember when Vince McMahon booked Roman Reigns as the top babyface for like 5 years, and it just sucked? Because it's almost like Vince forgot how to book a top babyface. I imagine Vince was comparing it to the main event babyface run of Chris Harris. Because, good Lord, like this, I get the point of it was Chris Harris now won 3 matches on the show, but it's like, this did nothing for him. Like, he won 3 matches over 2 people who've won a combined 1 match on TNA pay-per-view. And Sidney, do you remember what that 1 match that either of these 2 have won before was?
It had to be. Didn't the Hot Shots win 1 match against AMW?
They did on the Thanksgiving Eve 2002 edition of TNA. The Hot Shots beat AMW. And that is the only time either Chase Stevens or Andy Douglas have ever won a match on this show. Like, literally, Andy Douglas just debuted and has now had 3 matches on the show, including the 2 matches we had tonight.
Can I posit a theory with you about the whole AMW Naturals feud, at least to this point?
It hasn't really even been a feud.
Well,
AMW is feuding with other people, and we're randomly attacked by the fucking Naturals twice.
Well, can I posit a little bit of a theory?
Sure.
I think this was booked for the local fans who show up, who also are the same people that attend Burt Prentice's. I think it was a USA Championship Wrestling, because they wrestled for the longest time against each other, AMW and the Naturals, in that organization. And they tape at the asylum, and they do the shows at the asylum.
It's obvious those fans don't give a shit.
Yeah, they stopped giving a shit because he booked them for so long, like 5-6 months.
Plus, even if the fans did give a shit, they're not the only people who are watching the show. This is not Nashville Championship Wrestling. It's allegedly being seen by people all over the country. And in Canada, allegedly.
And Australia. Well, not anymore Australia, but...
Yeah, Australia canceled them a few months ago. So, 3.0 out of 10 for this handicap match.
3.0 out of 10.
Okay. Scott Hudson was now with Vince Russo. Vince Russo was standing next to Scott Hudson with a microphone. Scott Hudson asked Vince Russo a question. Vince Russo was offended, bro, that Scott Hudson would ask him a question during this interview. Chris Harris ran up and yelled at him, so Russo told him that he was not ready. Jarrett's been doing this for 20 years, bro, and that on March 17th, this made so little fucking sense because he's like, Chris Harris, you're not ready, and so on March 17th, you're going to wrestle Jeff Jarrett for the NWA World Title. Make that make sense, ladies and gentlemen. Make that make sense. And then he says that for the next 21 days, Chris Harris will hate him. Why should he be any different? But, so Chris Harris is going to hate him for one show, because, 2 weeks from now is a live show, and 3 weeks from now is the fucking Jarrett match. But,
No,
make this make sense, Cindy.
Next week is live. 2 weeks is America's X Cup. 3 weeks is the title match.
Yeah, so how is Harris... how is Russo going to make Harris mad at him for 21 days when Harris only has to be mad at him for one show?
Maybe he's going to force him to wrestle Explosion.
Also, when was the last time Jeff Jarrett or Chris Sabin defended their titles?
Jeff Jarrett defended his title.
He hasn't defended it this year, has he?
Under the new management show. Because Dustin Rhodes got the title shot.
He didn't defend it against Dustin Rhodes. He just had a match with Dustin Rhodes. Because they made a point to say it was not a title match.
So, did he have a title match against El Leon?
I don't think that was a title match either.
I'm going to look this up. But I do know that at the end, they did shake hands, so there was some sort of agreement.
And Chris Sabin, I think he defended the title the week after Ultimate X. And even that, I'm not entirely sure of.
Yeah, he defended it against Michael Shane.
If you say so. So then, while Cindy looks that up, we then get The Gathering with Jim Mitchell versus Raven and Sabu. Now, last week, Raven was in jorts and a t-shirt with his TNA theme song, and that was to show that he was back to being the ECW version of Raven. This week, he came out in his TNA gear of no shirt and a skirt, but they had Keep Him Separated by the Offspring playing, which was his ECW theme. They cannot make up their mind on this one, can they?
No, they can't. And by the way, I did look it up. According to Cage Match, it was a World Heavyweight title match. With
Cage
Jarrett and
Match,
Dustin
as we
Rhodes.
know, is never wrong. Cage Match is never wrong. Raven took care of both of them by himself, but Sabu figured he should try to earn his paycheck and did a double springboard tope to both Punk and Julio outside the ring. Sabu missed on a chair-assisted top rope leg drop, which gave the Gathering the advantage for almost 2 whole seconds before Raven cut them off. When Punk and Julio did take over, they literally changed the corners to where the partners stood, which was just weird to me. Sabu realized the best defense was a good offense and took turns throwing chairs at both of his opponents. Mitchell tried to hit Raven with a chair, but that didn't work out very well for him. Sabu went for a springboard, and Raven went to hit the air with a chair. And unfortunately, Sabu flew into the path of the air, and he collided with the chair. Despite that, Raven just dropped Punk with an even flow DDT for the pin. Not sure what the point of him hitting Sabu with the chair was, since that was it. There was no 3LK fight after the match. There was no, anything. Raven just took the mic and said that he wants the world title and is upset that Chris Harris is getting the title shot first. I will say that I did like this match, and I thought it was pretty gosh darn good. I gave it a 5.0 out of 10.
It's a 4.5 out of 10 for me. I think that fair chair spot really didn't sit well with me. Otherwise, it was a pretty good match.
Now, before we get to Scott Hudson being with AJ Styles, we get to talk about the big news of the week. Now, it's important before Cindy goes off on the rant that I'm sure she's about to go off on, because she made a very special point to ask me about this. I have to give a little bit of a backstory. And that being that back on November 1st, 2003, Ring of Honor did a show that became somewhat famous due to an incident after a scramble cage match. Teddy Hart got up after the match was over and did a bunch of random backflips off the cage into the ring, and then did one off the top of the cage onto the wrestlers standing on the floor, wondering what the fuck is he doing. This led to Teddy being fired from Ring of Honor and led to a lot of bad blood between Teddy and a lot of the ROH locker room, including one CM Punk. Now, Teddy was booked for this week's TNA show, as mentioned, as part of the Mexico-Canada America's X Cup, and Punk had apparently let it be known weeks ahead of time that he would slap Teddy. Now, Cindy, do you want me to finish the story, or do you need to take it from here?
No, I could take it from here. So, backstage, CM Punk, not one to lie to people, ran into Teddy backstage and slapped him. He was true to his word, and they had a brawl. I refer to this as the original brawl out, because this had major ramifications with the company. Well, I don't want to say major, but it did have, some pretty clear ramifications. Because after this happened, and it happened this week, they decided that we can't get rid of Teddy Hart just yet because we got to have him for next week's show and the X Cup. But because Punk was the instigator, he was fired after this week. So instead of having what was going to be the scheduled or planned out, I would assume, Punk, Raven, Clockwork Orange, House of Fun match, which I'm assuming it was, or that was going to be the end, Punk just is dropped right then and there. He's fired. So that ends the feud as well. 2 other people would be fired after this incident. One, because of the part that he had in the brawl, and one for nothing whatsoever other than, we don't know what to do with you anymore. So, spoiler alert for the America's X Cup. Teddy Hart will wrestle the 2 other matches he's scheduled to wrestle, which would be the tag match, and I assume it's still an 8-man elimination tag match. And then he's gone from TNA forever. He doesn't come back. Also, because of this, Julio De Niro is fired from TNA. And he didn't, as far as I'm aware, was probably pulling apart Punk from Teddy Hart, or had nothing to do with it whatsoever. I mean, you could have still had Julio De Niro, make up numbers or something like that. I mean, he got shafted big time for doing nothing wrong. I guess they feel like because the Raven Punk feud is dead, we have no use for De Niro. So he's gone. Mitchell is sidelined again because he was an intrinsic part of the Raven Punk feud, and now that's no longer happening.
So a few corrections, just a few here. It didn't happen backstage. It happened at the White Trash Cafe, which was a real restaurant in Nashville that let the boys eat for free. And what happened was Punk was there eating his food, and Teddy Hart came in and smirked at him. And Punk got up. They ended up outside the cafe, and Punk did, in fact, slap Teddy, and Teddy punched him right in the face. It was then broken up by, of all people, Sabu, because even though Sabu is a nut himself, both did respect Sabu. Now, they, of course, did end up back at the arena where they both talked to Don Harris, who was there on behalf of the office, and he had a meeting with both of them and told them basically to knock it off or they would be fired. Now, as you did mention, this is Punk. This is ended up being Punk's last show in TNA. I don't know if he was necessarily fired here. Punk has always contended that what happened was when the Rob Feinstein incident happens, which is about to happen, TNA basically said that nobody could work for Ring of Honor, and Punk basically said, fuck you, and quit. Now, it is possible that two things are true, because again, the Rob Feinstein incident doesn't happen for like 2 weeks, I believe. Or at least how it ends up on TV happens in about 2 weeks. It's possible that two things are true, that they didn't book him for a couple weeks kind of as a suspension, and then he decided not to come back, or, whatever. But the point is, Punk does not come back. And I will say there was no indication that they were ever doing a one-on-one feud with Punk and Raven. It doesn't seem like they were ever going to pull that trigger. And if anything, they would have done the gimmick match with Raven and Sabu, or Raven and anybody else as a teammate. But Raven has gotten both his revenge and his more revenge that he vowed to get. And I believe Jim Mitchell is gone until Abyss, until he ends up being Abyss's manager.
Which is a shame, because Jim Mitchell is one of the best talkers. And in an era where, let's be honest, there aren't that many great talkers. He would be very beneficial to somebody. But he lived in Florida. I don't know where he lived at the time. I think it was Florida or Philly or something like, far away from Nashville.
The thing is, at this point, like, his character didn't even really fit with this anyway. He was here because Raven liked him and wanted him to keep a job, which is great and everything. But it's like Julio De Niro and CM Punk should not be managed by Jim Mitchell. It just isn't a good fit, those three together. It's not the right character for that. He was great with the Disciples of the New Church, and I get for whatever reason, they're all gone. But it's like, well, him with Shane Douglas was really a fucking dumb clash there. But yeah, here we are. It's the end for Punk in TNA. And hey, we're gonna say this: things turn out pretty good for CM Punk.
They turn out all right.
Yeah, I think the guy, he ended up working out. But yeah.
I think he picked up a title here and there. He carved out a nice little career for himself. I will say, however, he is a massive hypocrite.
I feel like I have to keep asking this to people. Please point on the doll to where CM Punk touched you, because Jesus Christ, people. I'm just going to say this. Everybody involved in the whole brawl out and everything at All In everyone seems happy with where everybody is right now. So it's like, I do not, like if everybody else is happy, well, gosh darn it, I think the rest of us should be pretty damn happy too. But
Well,
sheesh.
my beef with Punk has nothing to do with those things.
What is your beef with Punk?
There's the Saudi stuff, and more recently, where he took the side of the twin turfs, Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano, and hyping up their absolute disaster piece of an MMA match coming up.
Scott Hudson was now with AJ Styles, who was apparently in the main event tonight against Abyss in a 2 out of 3 falls tables match. And then to make things more complicated, the winner of the match will become the tag team champions, and they'll pick a partner to be the tag champs. And next week on this show, the winner and his partner will take on the loser and his partner in a tag team title match. Why couldn't they have just done this in the first place?
Because we got to keep things interesting, bro.
Yeah, nothing says interesting like this. AJ said that he fully intends to win tonight and next week, which is when I figured out that that's when the tag team title match is. Conan then narrated a video to plug the March 10 America's X Cup, and I had to laugh because they didn't have any footage of the Canadians at all. And, they're just plugging away Mexico versus Canada by showing all the cool stuff the Mexican guys do. Okay. So next week, this is what they announced for next week. And I am not de-emphasizing it. I am not overemphasizing it. I am telling you what Mike Tenay and Don West told us is going to be on next week's show. And you tell me whether or not this sounds like a show, a can't miss show, something we have to go out of our way to see. This is what's announced. Team Japan versus Team NWA. No names, no, nothing here to tell us who the fuck Team Japan is. The best they told us was that Team Japan saw the America's X Cup and now want to wrestle the losers. So we're going to Team Japan versus Team NWA. We are also told we're going to have a surprise for Jeff Jarrett. We are also told that the Insane Clown Posse will crack down Glenn Gilberti, David Young, and Kid Cash, whatever that means. We're then told we're going to have something for Chris Harris. You better not miss this fucking show next week, by the way. You'll miss something for Chris Harris. And then Abyss and his partner will take on AJ Styles and his partner for the tag team titles, which is the match that should happen this week. But we can't have nice things. And
No,
literally that is what they explained next week's show is going to be. Am I leaving anything out when I said that?
No, because that's exactly what they said and exactly what I wrote down.
Something for Chris Harris. That was the one where I'm like, really? The best we can do is something?
You couldn't at least say, hey, we're going to have him wrestle a former world champion and have it be, they could have grabbed somebody. I mean, he could have wrestled Sabu, former ECW champion.
Raven was pissed off last week. Why doesn't he wrestle Raven next week? By the way, So I went to archive.org to see if there was anything archived there, and sadly, there is nothing on archive.org for NWATNA.com between October 2003 and June 2005.
Wow.
Yes. Scott Hudson was now with no one because a blonde woman showed up and shoved him off camera and introduced Johnny Fairplay. Fair Play said there will be no playing fair with Johnny.
Lollipop was gone. I thought she was gone after last week. Turns out I was wrong. She's here still.
It doesn't even matter who she is. A blonde woman showed up that didn't have a name or was introduced at all. And Johnny Fairplay said there's no playing fair with Johnny tonight because AJ Styles interrupted him last week. Fairplay said he had a surprise for AJ tonight, but it was not his dead grandmother. Hudson said we will hear more from Fairplay later on. And I wrote, the show is almost over, so I hope we don't. AJ Styles versus Abyss in a 2 out of 3 falls tables match for the tag team titles. During the pre-match video, AJ said that he was still the number 1 contender for the world title. And I was about to say, since when? But then I remembered 5 weeks ago was that random ass tag match where he won, or if he won, he would get a title shot. And I'm just happy somebody remembered that stipulation. Abyss, hey, for the first time, Abyss came out with his tag team title belt this week. I still want a skit of how AJ gave it to him in the first place. Now,
I think Don Callis threatened something, I guess.
Now, last week they said what would happen is they would put 4 tables around the ring. And sure enough, that's what they did. There was 4 tables outside. Now, I know the real reason was so we could have a screw job finish. But in a match where there'd be 3 broken tables at most, why did we need 4 tables?
No idea.
Anyway, remember last week when these two had the worst match they ever had with each other?
Yep.
Well, thankfully, they both realized that they were better than that. And I'll be honest, like, they had the most false finishes you've ever seen in a tables match. At one point, Abyss pulled out a chair because he may have thought this was a hard 10 match, so he should use a strategically placed weapon to get some points. Abyss did his favorite spot where he put a chair on AJ's chest and went for the running earthquake splash, and then AJ just turns the chair sideways, so Abyss goes groin first into that chair. Abyss likes doing that spot as much as Kurt Angle likes having a chair ricochet off the ropes into his head.
Still a great spot, though.
Yes. The first fall ended with a tremendous spot, a spectacular spot, if I say so myself. Abyss is on the apron. They have a table on the floor. And Abyss is on the apron, and he's teetering, and he's tottering. And AJ takes a running start at Abyss. And in one fluid motion, Abyss heaves AJ overhead with a belly-to-belly suplex out of the ring and through the table. That was a fucking insane spot, and one that I know gets replayed a decent amount because I think it's on the original TNA Impact intro. But it's like, that was a fucking great spot. And also, that spot may also explain why AJ Styles recently retired. It doesn't explain how he made it this far, but, you know, watching this made me suddenly realize that maybe AJ really is retired.
I think he learned, I want to say, when he learned to stop doing all of the crazy spots, which was what, 2008?
I would say when he got hired by New Japan.
So 2013.
2014.
Well, right, because he had to drop the belt to Nick Aldis.
Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what could be considered one of the death knell of the original TNA, the original idea of TNA.
So the second fall did it with a pretty neat spot in of itself. Abyss ended up on the apron after a Pele kick, and inside the ring, AJ did a springboard off of a table in the ring to give Abyss a Hurricane Rana through a table outside the ring, which it wasn't quite as fluid as that belly-to-belly, but it was still pretty neat, and they did like 800 replays of it, which for a company that never shows a replay of anything, you know, I called that a win. Then we get the finish here. Now, AJ Styles is intent that at some point in his life, he is going to give Abyss a sunset flip powerbomb out of the apron or out of the corner. But it didn't happen a few weeks ago when Jeff Jarrett attacked him, and it didn't happen this week when Johnny Fairplay ran down and moved the table out of the way. Abyss squished referee Mike Posey in the corner because you need a ref bump in a no disqualification match. By the way, AJ gave Fairplay a Styles Clash to get him out of there. By the way, the table they had in the ring broke because, of course, it did, and not in the someone went through it broke way. It broke in the way that the leg broke off, much like how it did last week too. But this week they were kind of smart enough to have to do something with the table because they prop it up on the middle rope here, and they put Abyss across it, and AJ first does a springboard senton atomico, and then a springboard 450 knee drop, and both times that fucking table did not want to break. So AJ did a springboard splash through the table, and then out walked, emphasis on walked, Lex Luger, of all people. And Lex Luger press slammed AJ through a table. Then Luger wakes up Mike Posey and pointed to AJ laying in table debris, which somehow counts as a finish. That was the finish.
What an absolute bullshit finish to what. This is why I thought the X Division 3-way was a better match. That ending, it was the Starrcade 99 Powerbomb match ending, and I fucking hated that ending so much.
Honestly, that was worse because at least, in this one, he actually went through the damn table. There was a Randy Orton Miz tables match where Randy Orton put Alex Riley through a table and while the referee was bumped, and then the Miz beat up Randy Orton and put him in the table debris. The referee woke up, saw Randy Orton in a broken table, called for the bell, and then a second referee ran down and got the match restarted. Where is Mike Posey and Rudy Charles to come in and restart this match?
They're with Kevin Northcutt helping to find Jeff Jarrett's phone.
Abyss is not the tag team champions, and while it is implied, it is never actually said that Lex Luger is going to be his tag team championship partner, which thankfully, unless I have completely blocked it in my mindset, does not happen. And then Luger, in case walking to the ring wasn't enough, Luger lethargically rolled AJ into the ring and put AJ in the torture rack in a lackadaisical manner as Abyss menaced nearby with both the tag title belts as the show went off the air. Honestly, until the finish, this was one of the best matches of the year. I still gave it an 8.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 6 out of 10 just because of that finish. Otherwise, I'd be in total agreement.
So that brings us to the end of the show. And even with a pretty good opener and a pretty good main event, that middle 50 minutes, that middle hour and 10 minutes of the show was the usual TNA bullshit. Match quality 3.94, overall enjoyment of 5.0, and future build 2.0. We have a date for the Chris Harris World Title match. We have the X Cup in 2 weeks. But nothing else on this show got anyone excited for anything else, including that fucking rundown of next week's show. And that gave us an overall rating of a 3.65.
Welcome back to being on air, Vince.
26 to go, ladies and gentlemen. 26 to go.
And you are going to be with Trey for some of those.
Maybe I should just skip a few weeks. I trust that one of you two know how to press the record button on Zoom.
I could set up a record via Discord and Audacity or something, or via stream or something.
Anyway, that's going to
Just
do it for
gotta
this
hook
week's
us up
show.
via Discord or something.
That's going to do it for this week's show. I hope you all enjoyed our descent into insanity. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
I am gonna have some stir fry.